Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Out of Nowhere. We're a terrific guest we've got on our show today. His name is Derrel Sims. Derrel Sims is known as the Alien Hunter. He's the world's leading expert on the alien abduction. His 38 years of field research has focused on physical evidence and led to groundbreaking discoveries of alien implants and alien fluorescence. As a former military police officer and CIA operator, he has a unique insight to alien organizations, which he believes functions similar to the intelligence agency. Can we please welcome Derrel to the show? Hello there.
How you doing there, Bob? Good to see you.
And it's good to see you too.
Well, it's good to be seen.
Yeah, I've got to say, I think last time you were on the show was over a year ago.
Yeah. Well, I've gained a little weight, so there's more of me to see.
I love it. I love it. Um, we're going to talk about the book as usual. What first inspired you to write Alien Hunter?
Well, good question. I wrote my first book. I didn't want to write any books, actually, but my best friend, who's a research associate with me, a surgical nurse, Pat, she said, "You've got to write a book." And I said, all I've got is field notes. And she said, "You put it in a book. You've got to do a book. People want to know what you're thinking." So I wrote the first book, and it was about my personal experiences of abduction from age 4 to age 17, where my events ended violently. And then my events took off again with my son getting abducted when he was 6 years old. So that I was an investigator at that point, but when they picked up my kid, that turned me from an investigator to a very concerned parent. I mean, if you get me, I can handle it. You come after my kids, I'll come after you.
Exactly, yeah. How did your own experience shape the direction of the book?
Well, again, another good question. I was a captive audience, literally, at this phenomenon at age 4. Um, uh, a special thing happened to me during my abduction event that I've never seen before with anyone else. I don't know how it happened, but you know how when the alien is abducted someone, they talk to them skull to skull,
Yeah.
without voice, and I could hear him and he could hear me, but what he didn't know is I could hear him communicating with his other comrades in the room, and he didn't know that I could overhear him. In the United States, we call it a hot mic. And I was able to hot mic them without them knowing that I'm listening to what they're talking about that they don't want us to know. I've been hot micing them for 13 years after that. For my following abductions, I kept doing that. And I never let them know that I could hear them talking privately with each other about what they really were going to do and were doing and what they weren't telling us. So I have a unique adaptation, I think, in that respect, because people say, well, they told me. What they tell you doesn't mean a whole lot. What they're saying behind your back is what really counts.
You're known for your investigative approach. What methods do you use to verify claims of alien contact?
Well, we do a lot of things. Number one is a lot of people say, well, I want you to hypnotize me. And I said, no, that's the last thing you want done. The first bullet fired at your case by the skeptics is somebody hypnotized you to believe all that stuff. I said, so we look at their case. They fill out about a 20-page form for us and do some symbolic profile drawings. I look at their handwriting. I'm a handwriting analyst. And after I look at all this and I question them to great length, basically we use, and this is kind of important to say, we use a system that I developed uh, by being a police officer and also in the CIA, and that system is called the Seven Hats, and it's seven. It's like using seven investigators or seven different um, seven hats to look at your case. Like one of them is the UFO hat. UFO hat is one that everybody wears, which I think is a kind of a huge mistake when it comes to research
Right.
because it's been fooled before. And there are people out there that like to fool people in the UFO community. The second hat is the cop hat, which is one I wear normally. And it looks at your case from a cop point of view. It's pretty tough. It looks just for the evidence, the facts. Your story doesn't mean much without the evidence.
Right.
And then the third one is the medical hat. So if you have an implant or something implanted in you, we remove it, and or you when we see your physical evidence, fluorescence on you, whatever was left from the alien, then we can look at that and get a pretty good idea of what's happened to you and who did it. From a scientific point of view, the next hat, the science hat, takes the medical work and looks at the implant or other physical evidence and gives us a good criteria of what's happened to you from a science level. So that's just four hats by themselves. So we use seven hats to look at every case.
What patterns or consistency have you found across different cases?
Well, a lot of the consistency we find, and you would expect that if the people are having the same experiences, you would expect for people to have similar accounts. Uh, and some your skeptics will say, well, that's because they read it and everything. But I travel all over the world, from Slovakia, UK. I've been to uh, good night to Turkey 3 times, the UK over 7 or 8 times, and all over the world, wherever I go, Japan, it doesn't matter. When I find these contact events, they have very, very, very similar accounts. And these accounts started from the early 50s forward. And there's no way that people can make up all this information from good night from 70 years ago, and when there was no internet or anything, and all have the same information about the same events. It's just impossible. It's not mass hallucination. Hallucinations don't work like that. So some of the things we find are things like people report the physical shape of the entities involved, and that gives us a pretty good clue as to who did what and how they did it. We get into a lot of detail about that, but we also find that people have a number of the abductees have uh, similar things that happen to them that they can't explain. For instance, like we found a lot of our people are Native American, Indian, Irish, Scots. 45% of them will be one of those kind, and
Right.
that's just stunning to find that out among
That
abductees.
is, isn't it?
It
Why
is.
is that then, Derrel?
Well, I can answer two ways. One is um, one is from my uh, from there's a different when I answer, I have to qualify it by saying this is what I think or this is what I know.
Yeah.
When I say what I know, I'm speaking with my cop hat. I can prove it. When I say I think, that it's a guess. I mean, it's probably a good educated guess, but it's still a guess. So I could be wrong. I'm open to that. But one PhD scientist was the psychologist was interviewing me one night, and he said, "Well, the reason they pick up Native Americans and Irish is because they're all so spiritual." And I said, finally, I looked at him and said, you actually wanted me to, you wanted to interview me, right? And he said, yeah. I said, why are you answering the questions without asking me. He said, "Oh, I'm sorry." I said, "Yeah, that would be people probably actually want to hear what I have to say since you invited me on here." So I said, I said, let me explain some things to you about Native Americans. First of all, if you're not black, you don't get to talk about black people like you are. If you're not Native American, Native Americans don't want you talking about them unless you are. And I said, I'm Native American, Scott Irish. So I'll talk about all of them. I said, first of all, Native Americans, historically, I said, regardless of the dribble that you read on the internet and the movies you see, um, they were a pretty rough bunch of people on each other. If you got caught by the Lakota and you were Comanche, you're going to get in a lot of trouble. That's just the way it was. I mean, the torture and things like that was just normal. If you got
Yeah.
caught by the other guy, that's just the way it was. I said, my point is that I suspect that and he butted in and said, well, it's because the alien is, they're upgrading the DNA. And I said, you don't know that at all. There's not a hint of evidence that you know of anywhere to prove that. I said, first of all, I said, let me throw this at you. I said, many of the abductees are Native American, many of them. And I said, they may be, if they were doing anything genetically, they might try to breed out the ability for us to fight and defend ourselves. That's because contactees, they're just like honeybees. They'll do anything you want. They don't care.
Hmm.
I said, abductees don't do that. You mess with them or their children, if they can get you, they're going to come after you. I said, so you might think of it that way. He said, well, the reason they took the Irish is because they were so spiritual. I said, if you ever gone to Notre Dame, he said, what do you mean? I said, there's a big sign there in front of that. The Notre Dame says called the Fighting Irish. That's what they do. Busting heads and taking names is what the Irish, the Scots, and the Native Americans have been doing their whole history. That's what they do. They fight. And you can agree with the cause or not, but the point is, we're defenders of whatever our values are. And I said, so maybe the alien's more interested in trying to figure out how to alter these guys and get them to become contactees instead of abductees. That would make more sense if I were going to guess.
Yeah. There's a question from Stephen here. Do you know what type of alien beings was this then?
What type of alien being did what?
I think when you spoke earlier about aliens, these alien beings
Okay.
were the different ones.
Yeah, we got 7 different flavors, and I'll explain that a little bit. And uh, my involvement with alien from age 4 to age 17, clearly, I came after I became a researcher and I started studying the alien instead of listening to stories. In other words, I took my UFO hat off, put my cop hat on.
Yeah.
I started noticing all kinds of interesting things that we had missed. Like you got the small gray. He's we know quite a bit about him. He's got an IQ of about 80. That's called a moron in the United States. You say, well, why would anybody make an alien? Why would they want an alien with an IQ of 80? Because we call him the pizza delivery guy, and you're the pizza. He picks you up and takes you back. His IQ is so low that he often can't get your clothes on right. Sometimes he'll put somebody else's clothes on you. He doesn't get it. He makes lots of mistakes. The second gray alien, which is taller, has got an IQ of about 135. That entity is a lot smarter, and if an implant's going to be placed in you, that's going to be the guy that does it.
Right.
Then you've got the mantis being, who's about 7, 8 feet tall. He has got an IQ of about 180. He is super smart, and he's involved in a whole different process. All these entities have different jobs, Then you got the humanoid called the so-called Nordic, and then you got the Bigfoot guy. And then you got the reptile guy. So if a person believed in evolution, and I don't, but if you did, the alien lineup I just told you about is proof evolution doesn't exist because none of these guys evolved from each other. Bigfoot didn't evolve from the praying mantis. Praying mantis didn't evolve from the gray. The Nordic didn't evolve many of them. So you have to ask the big question: how did these guys get here? Who are they? And there's two answers basically. The first answer a lot of people come up with is, well, these are 7 different races of aliens from other planets. Well, that sounds good, but when you examine the entities carefully and the stories behind them, you find out that they're not 7 races, they're 7 models. Somebody hatched, cloned, made, or manufactured these entities. All 7 of them are different, but all the DNA comes from planet Earth. Every bit of it. Not from Zeta Reticuli or some other planet in the Pleiades, but from Earth. If you look at look at the Nordic. When you look at him, and big, tall Nordic guy, muscular, blue-eyed, blonde-haired, that sort of
Yeah.
thing. Where do you think you get Nordic DNA? I'm going to take a wild guess. Norway. Probably. Where would you get
Probably.
Bigfoot DNA? Well, it's they and Dr. Melba Ketchum did a DNA testing on Bigfoot DNA. In fact, we even offered some of it if they wanted some of ours because we
Yeah.
had plenty. And they found that he was no big shock here. The first thing they found, he's a simian. He's a ape-like creature. Well, no doubt about that. The second thing they found, he had mitochondrial DNA, was modern human woman. So how does that happen? To mix 2 species like that, a modern human woman and a Bigfoot, it's called a transgenic. It's where you're mixing 2 species together. But again, the DNA, the modern human woman and the Bigfoot, the simian, comes from planet Earth. The DNA originates here. So someone came here, took some DNA of these different mantis, a human,
Yeah.
a Bigfoot, and so on, and then they took it, in my opinion, back in space on these massive craft that they're in, and started doing genetic altering. And the purpose was to convince people, now this may upset some listeners, is to convince you that these 7 models we're looking at here come from another planet. The fact is they don't. They actually come from here. But the question is, who made them, who manufactured them, and that sort of thing. But you're looking at 7 models. I illustrate the point is, if you look at the little gray and the Nordic, it's like going to a car place, and you go to a Chevrolet car company, and you look at the Chevette, which is the lowest end of the car they got. That's like the little gray. You look at the Corvette Stingray, that's like the humanoid, the Nordic. He's at the other end. So which one do you want? A Chevette or a Corvette Stingray? Because that's your choices. I mean,
Yes.
and whoever comes to you and does whatever. See, we found all these entities on the same UFO craft at the same time, not separately, all of them at the same time.
Right, there's a question here from Rick Allen. You are not overhearing the aliens by chance. You are hearing them because they are allowing you to. It's a strategy.
They're doing what? Once again, please.
You're not hearing the aliens by chance. You are hearing them because they are allowing you to. It's a strategy.
Well, there are all kinds of theories out there about who's in charge and who's doing what. But the alien, when they abduct people, they generally pretty much take you over. They're pretty much in charge of you. But we have actually trained people to resist and to do things differently. On several occasions, we actually had the abductee take over the alien, in particular, the small gray alien,
Right.
so that they could order him what to do. Most people don't know that. Most of our work is not secretive, but it's very private. And we just it's rare that I come on these programs, and yours is a good one. So I come here because I don't mind telling the stuff. But we do all kinds of research. It's You're not going to read this in a book somewhere.
Right. You have spoken about alleged implants. What criteria do you use to determine whether an object is unusual?
That's a great point. First of all, I'm going to tell your audience that implants are quite rare. If you get on the internet, you're going to read a bunch of stuff that just is not true. A lot of it is just made up, people's
Yeah.
ideas. My point is that the when someone tells me they have an alien implant, my first question to them is, "Do you have any medical evidence to support that?" And if they say, "Well, I got a bump on my arm," a bump on your arm could be anything. It doesn't mean you have an alien implant. So my next question is, do you have any medical or scientific evidence that completes that thought? In other words, do you have any X-rays, CAT scans, MRIs, any medical evidence from a medical professional that indicates what your statement made is true? And most of the time, the answer is no. I said, well, you might want to go get an X-ray. You might want to go get an evaluation. Well, and of course, a lot of people say, I don't want to. Well, okay, if you don't want to, then your case is over. We don't investigate cases that claim evidence but won't show it. So if you've got evidence, we claim that we've done 27 surgical interventions from India to the United States removing alien implants. When I make that statement, I have to be able to prove what I'm saying. I have the surgeries all filmed. We have the evidence studied and so on.
Yeah.
So if you make a statement to me that you have an alien implant, then I want to see medical evidence of that. And then we're interested. We want to talk to you about your implant at that point. And even then, some of the surgeries we've done on people had interesting objects in them. Turned out that they weren't alien at all. They were just foreign objects like pencil lead. Kids get in a fight at school and just stab each other with a pencil. Well, that pencil lead, if you didn't come out, it's still in your arm. Your body will encapsulate it, and it will not disappear. It'll be there forever. And if you get an X-ray of your arm, you'll say, "Oh my God, that must be an alien implant." No, it's a pencil lead. It's it's just that simple. Some things are that simple. But alien implants themselves, we have to look at medical evidence. That's a really important thing. And then we move forward from that point. We have doctors on hand that look at your medical records, your case. And I've got doctors working with me from the United States to the UK, Germany, Colombia, Brazil. So we've got some pretty good doctors that are very, very qualified to look at your case.
There's a question from Les Carver here. Let's have a look. What does the CIA think about your alien work?
Great question. I like this. Um, they didn't call me and tell me. They just keep an eye on me all the time. Since you brought the case up, I'll give you a perfect example. Recently, a gentleman called me from in Texas, and he's a police officer. He's a police officer at a special university where they do. He's a high tech cop, is what he is. He's there. They do a lot of secret testing on viruses and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And he's there to make sure that everything's protected. And he's also an abductee. One night he called me and said, "Derrel, I think I've been implanted." And I said, "Okay, do you have any medical evidence of that?" He said, "I have the actual object. I dug it out of myself." I said, "Okay, send it to me and let me look at it." And he did. Several days later, true story, hand to God, true story. 2 special agents from the FBI showed up at his house in Dallas, Texas. They knocked on his door. They came in 2 separate cars. They looked at him and they said, We want to talk to you about your alien experiences. He said, I was really puzzled. He said, how would they know that? And then finally they said, is there any evidence in your case? And he said, yeah. He said, I think I have a biological implant. And they said to him, uh, can we see the evidence? He said, I sent it off to be studied. Hand to God, true story.
Yeah.
They said you sent it to Derrel Sims in Houston, Texas. He said at that point I got really scared. He said I didn't know what to think. I said, let me explain to you how this works. I said, the intelligence people watch me. I said, I have a top secret clearance. They watch what I do. They're not worried about me. I'm 100% honorable, 100% truthful. Uh, I'm just I want I want the world to know what's really going on. That's different between me and the intelligence community.
Yeah.
And second, as I said, the reason I said they're watching you is because you had contact with me. Since you had contact with me and you're involved protecting these high tech scientists, they just want to make sure that you haven't gotten some secret of information and you're giving it to the Chinese or something. I said, so you're clear. I mean, they know who I am. They just didn't know what you were doing. And so that it's the answer is just that simple. So they already know what I'm doing. They like it because I make a lot of my stuff public, and I think the world ought to know.
Exactly. Yeah. I totally agree with that. How do you support individuals who are frightened or unsure about their experience?
Once again, please.
About having an implant?
Okay. What,
How do you support individuals who are frightened or unsure about their
oh,
experience?
yeah. Great question. Uh, the first thing I tell people is it's important for you to understand that when we put our cop hat on, or medical hat, or science hat, those are extremely technical. And we're not here to scare you. We're not here to uh, blow smoke in your face or anything else. We're here to tell you the truth of what it is or isn't. And in most of these cases, the implants are not alien at all. There's something else natural. But in the case where a person actually has a quote unquote alien implant, we'll want to know a lot about the story. That's when I'll work with them personally and find out a lot about I want to know how you were approached, what kind of entity approached you. What part of you did they touch first? How did you respond to them? What did they actually say to you? What actually occurred? All those are important things that tells me a lot about, from the cop hat point of view, tells me a lot about the entities, what they actually did or didn't do, and if they put something in you that was of no great importance, I'll know about that. If they put something in you that was of great importance, I'll know about that. But a lot about what happened to you that I can find out will tell me a lot about the entities themselves. So that tells me what to do for the patient, for the person. I work with them on a personal level and I give them a cushion, so to speak, for their psychological trauma. And then I start telling them things about the alien they don't know, and they're not going to read in a book somewhere. I know because number one, I've had the experiences that you had, in much more detail. Number two, like I said, when I was a child, I hot mic'd the alien. I still do. In rare cases where we've had an alien show up at one of our investigative meetings where we're out in the woods for weeks at a time, alien shows up, I can actually hear him talking to other entities. So I can still do that. My point is that I'm hearing what they're not telling us. And what they're not telling us is a lot. So why do I not believe the alien and the so-called They're space brothers here to help us and save the planet and all that. Number one, when are they going to start doing it? Number two, they've been here for 150 to 200 years doing the abduction program, and they still haven't done anything with anybody to upgrade their DNA yet. No evidence of it. None.
None at all. Question from Stephen here. What's your take on the Men in Black? Are they human or alien?
I like these questions. Smart people you got there. Uh, Men in Black, there are two flavors, and you hit it right on the head. Some of them are intelligence operatives and have been since 1947. The OSS, which later became the CIA, started a group of people, mostly from the Air Force, and they dressed in black, and they came without ID and all that, and they intimidated a lot of witnesses, especially at Roswell, threatened them with all kinds of stuff, and got their stories from them. There is another entity that shows up that he is in fact alien. He dresses in usually a long black coat, large brim hat, like a fedora.
Yeah.
And he is, it's better to think of him as the muscle end of the family. If there's a problem that goes on in the abduction that they can't solve, the alien can't figure out or can't correct, he'll show up. And when he finishes with you, generally the problem is solved. You're quite obedient after he takes care of business. But the question is excellent because they're both. The question is, which came first, chicken or the egg? Did we steal that idea from them, or they steal it from us?
Exactly. Yes. That's true. Another question from Leslie here. In your experience, are there increased alien activity during war, nuclear tests, and natural disasters?
Yes. Great question. Again, a very thoughtful person, especially during nuclear activity. If there's somebody like China or somebody or Russia is doing an underground nuclear test, you need to start looking in that area, and you will find massive UFO activity and paranormal activity in that realm. When they did, most people are familiar in the United States with cattle mutilations happening specifically around the Dulce area, Native American tribal area. That is true. But what they don't know is that the United States military asked the Hickory Apache Indians if they could detonate a nuke on tribal lands underground, and they said no. So the United States government just went a mile or two outside the Tulsi base, the Tulsi area, and did it anyway on a government land.
No.
But then all of a sudden you hear about all kinds of cattle, human and other mutilations and weird things happening, UFO activity, all kinds of stuff around the Dulce area. It became very famous. And I spoke at the last Native American conference there at Dulce. And a Native American tribal man came up to me at my table with his cane and he sat down. He looked at me and said, what do you think about the speaker they got up there? And I said, you mean the Native American talking about this and that? And he said, yeah. I said, he didn't have much of a clue about what's going on. He said, you don't believe it? I said, a lot of what he's talking about is just stuff he's heard or read and just made up. He don't know. He looked at me and said, you really are an investigator, aren't you? I said, pretty much. And he says, what do you think about the Dulce base up there on the mountain? I said, that's not even important. He said, why is that? I said, if you're going to hide something in the intelligence community, you put something in plain view so everybody thinks that's it. The base is not up there. It's somewhere. It's near here, but it's not there. He laughed and laughed and said, you really are an investigator. He said, when you come back to the Dulce Reservation, I'll take you out to where it is. He said, you're right. It's not up there. I said, there's stuff happens up there. I get that. But that's a show for you, a show for investigators. It's not what's really going on. They're never going to tell you that.
Oh, no, they never are. Have you ever encountered a case that changed your own beliefs or assumptions?
Well, again, I need to clarify this for your. It's a good question. Uh, First of all, I did not assume when I encountered the alien, my first experience when I was 4 years old. I didn't say, "Oh my gosh, that's an alien from Zeta Reticuli." First of all, I didn't. At age 4 in 1952, nobody knew what an alien was. Nobody had a clue, and I, at 4 years old, didn't have a clue about nothing. All I wanted to know is when we're going to eat, and and that sort of thing. 4 years old, you don't have a lot of
No.
uh, outlandish thoughts about outer space and so on. So when I looked at the entity that was standing in front of me, I did act, I think, a lot different than most abductees. I looked at him carefully. I could hear him communicating with me, and then I could hear him communicating with someone else in the room. And he told whoever was in the room, "It's awake." And I realized that it was me. So I looked at him carefully, and he had big black eyes, perfectly round, about an inch and a half across. And he's standing in front of me. It's freezing cold in the middle of winter. I've got my quilts all wrapped around me. It's so cold.
Mm.
And he's standing there with no clothes on. I can't figure that out. Why is he not freezing to death? And so my first observation, when I looked from his eyes on down, his little pinholes for nose, a slit for a mouth, bony little tiny neck, and then I looked and he didn't have any mammary glands. And then I noticed he didn't have a belly button. I thought, that's weird. I got a belly button. Why doesn't he have a belly button? That's questions everybody ought to be asking.
Yeah.
Why doesn't he have a belly button? And I looked at him, and he didn't have as little 4-year-old kids would say, he didn't have a TT. What does that mean? Well, when I got older and I started looking back at the event, what happened to me, I realized if you don't have a belly button, you weren't born. You weren't born. You were hatched, cloned, made, or manufactured. If you didn't have a TT, you don't even expel water from yourself. And you don't procreate. So if you don't procreate, it goes back to the statement: you were made, hatched, cloned, or manufactured. So I've studied the alien for a long, long, long time. So my belief, I didn't have any beliefs about aliens. I just knew that whatever was in front of me was real, and he left finally. But studying it as an investigator over a period of time, with all these 7 hats that I have, all the hats looked at it and they came up with a totally different view than people with the UFO hat on. UFO hat people say, "Oh my God, those are aliens from other planets." How do you know that?
Yeah, how do you?
Where do you prove that?
Yeah, that's true, yeah. Steve has got a. Do you believe that fae or folklore or alien beings or something else?
Wonderful question. I love your audience. Man, these guys are smart. Guys and girls are got good stuff here. The It's really funny when I go to when I went to Cornwall and did a presentation. They made me hold the Cornwall flag, big black flag, and they said, "Wow, look at him! He's as tall as Wallace himself. Why, he's corniest I've ever seen one." And I go to Scotland, they say, "Well, look at him! He's tall as Wallace himself. He's Scottish if I've ever seen one." And I go to Ireland, they say, "Why, he's Irish if I've ever seen one. Look at him! He's taller than Wallace himself. Why, he's Irish if I've ever seen one." Oh, I laughed. I just love the UK people are wonderful. So my point is that it's not what I believe. because what I believe that I reserve beliefs for things that are very fixed, very permanent, very spiritual, that sort of thing. Uh, uh, Belief, it's like a guy told me he didn't believe in aliens. And I said, so? That doesn't mean anything. I
No.
said, I don't believe in the Great Wall of China. He said, well, it exists. I said, so do aliens. Well, but I can show you pictures of the Great Wall of China. I said, I can show you a picture of aliens. I said, I'm not talking about stuff you can see on the internet. We actually have 8x10 color photos. I said, you haven't seen the stuff I have. You don't know what I have. So don't judge what you don't even see. You're not
Mm.
a psychic. You don't know. I said, I've got actually intelligence photos of hybrids and of aliens. And I said, I guarantee you, there's a lot about the alien you don't know anything about. You're reading too much stuff on the internet. So it's not a matter of belief to me. The question is, what can I prove? What I can generally prove is that the evidence shows that the seven beings I've told you about are made, hatched, cloned, and manufactured. They are not the only things they've made, hatched, cloned, and manufactured. And some of the fae, the fairy, these sort of things, some of these are, in my opinion, possibly related to the same phenomena.
Yeah.
And I can't. That's nothing I can prove. Again, that's what I think, and my thinking can change. You got better evidence than I do. I'm all ears. I'll listen to anybody's evidence, anybody's, that I want to know. I'm not here to say I know and you don't know. I'm just saying that I've been here for doing this for well over 50 years, and I probably know a couple of things that some people might not. And like somebody told me about the implants the other day, he said they know all about it. That's interesting. I said I discovered it in 1960. How come you never said anything about them before then? Because you didn't even know they existed. I
Right.
said, so I finally told people they existed, did some surgeries, and then everybody became an expert overnight. Now they know all of it. They think. I
Oh
said,
yeah.
I got news for you. You still don't know. You're still looking for a chip, a piece of metal inside a chip that is the implant. I said, the implant's not even that. That's what you need to be looking for is the biology. You missed it by 15 yards. And you guys, I said, everybody I've ever known that ever even remotely had anything to do with an implant, first thing I do is scrape all the biology off and say, aha, I have something here, probably extraterrestrial. You missed the barn by 15 yards. You threw the biology away. Let me tell you how important the biology is. One Nobel laureate told me and my doctors one day, Mr. Sims, the biology you have found that showed non-inflammatory response, chronic or acute, you may have a Nobel laureate find already. These idiots have thrown the biology away in every case. Doesn't mean anything to them. A Nobel laureate in biology said, you may have a Nobel laureate find right now in that biology if it can be replicated in the lab. I have three samples of it in water, formalin, and dried. Well, why don't you give those out? Why don't you give that out to a lab? I asked the Nobel laureate. I said, I was born at night and I was born in Texas, but it wasn't last night. What laboratory do you think I could send those to?
Exactly.
And he said, not one. He said, they'll steal your discovery instantly. I said, I know that.
Yeah.
So I'll keep it to myself until I find somebody appropriate.
Yeah. Great idea. That is. Um, Question from Rick Allen here. Why do you think that energy entities such as shadow people are on the increase?
I think that some of this stuff is people reporting more because they are two reasons. People are reporting more of what they see. Uh, in the past, people would report an alien, but not an energy entity because that makes people think you're nuts. One is just as real as the other is, but people don't. If all of a sudden the aliens started producing the entities produced another quote unquote alien that looked like well, a good example is the dog man, 7 foot tall creature like that. A lot of people are not going to report that, first of all, because they may not survive the sighting. Number two, if they do, they're not going to want to tell people about it because that could get them a lot of controversy. Number three, and the big reason, in my opinion, you see more of the different type of entity like an energy entity is because the purpose of the alien phenomena is to convince you. This is really important, and this is a big pill for people to swallow. Is to convince you that these are aliens from another planet. What if they're not? What if we've been played? Question is, to what end? What's the purpose? So there are a lot of reasons that scientists do not believe these are aliens from other worlds. They believe that their technology is real, that whoever they are, the UAP phenomena, as you want to call it now, is real and everything. But the aliens' purpose is to get you back to your UFO hat. They don't want you wearing a cop hat or another hat that investigates. They want you wearing a UFO hat. So if I send you an energy entity to look at, what do you think that is? Well, it's a superior being from another planet. I can tell you that right off. You don't know that to be true at all. It's just another way of presenting, quote unquote, an alien to you.
Yeah.
And if they're from somewhere else, if they're here, so to speak, from in the neighborhood, right here in our own solar system, we need to change our thinking about what's going on.
I'm sure we really do as well. Question from Mel. Derrel, these aliens better watch out because once our full capacity brain matter kicks in reason being we're the only small percentage, then the aliens will become pizzas.
Well, nails really sharp. I like her thinking. When I go to conferences, sometimes I'll put up I'll take questions, of course, at the end. And one lady stood and said, Derrel, you just don't understand, do you? You just don't get it. And I said, well, I'm a little thick around the ears. Why don't you straighten me out? They have flying saucers. Does that tell you they're from other planets? I said, young lady, if he's so smart and he's from another planet, why is it that you say he has a spaceship, so therefore he's from another planet? She said, yeah. First of all, what makes you think it's a spaceship from another planet? Well, they can do this, they can do that. So listen to me carefully. I said, this one's going to sting a little bit. If I go out in the permafrost and find a caveman, and we can thaw him out, and the salt in his blood didn't crystallize, and we can bring him back to life. Now I'm going to take him to my house. Obviously, I'm infinitely millions of light years ahead of him, right? He'll think so. Because when we walk in my house, I flip a light switch and the little sun comes on in the living room. Or worse than that, I speak and the light comes on without me touching anything. Now I'm at least 100,000 light years ahead of him. So, I said, and if I want to have some real fun with the guy, I'll turn the TV on, plug in the VCR, and play the movie 1 million BC, the caveman movie. And I'll tell him that's a time machine, and I filmed that back when he was killing that mammoth over there. I said, that's you in the back. Oh my God, I can't believe that's me. Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, that's my time machine. I can do all kinds of things. The fact is, you and I know that every word I said was a lie. I didn't I'm not the genius that invented the light bulb. All I know, you can teach any monkey how to flip a switch, turn the light on. So what makes you think that the alien is the one who made the spaceship? Well, they had to. I said, had to means what? You don't know that. I said, somebody made the ship. The question you need to ask is, how do they fly it? I'll give you a hint since you don't know. You will not find a driver's a steering wheel in there. You will not find you will not find uh, seat belts. You won't. There's a lot of things you're not going to find in there. Almost nothing. Do you want to know why? Because it's not operating that way. It operates on the neurology of the entity. I said, now, if it will operate on the neurology of the entity that's already been programmed of how to fly it, where to fly it, and so on, how smart does he have to be? He doesn't. It's just a program like you're in your computer. How smart is your computer? As smart as a program is. I said, you don't have a clue what's going on here. You don't have a clue. I said, my point to you is, if I can fool a caveman thinking I'm a million light years ahead of him with some of our normal tech, do you think you could have been fooled by the alien? But you don't have a clue either. You're no smarter than that caveman.
That's true. What did she say then?
Oh, they get mad, walk off. Then about 5 years later, they'll come like, oh my God, Derrel, it's so amazing. The scientists have, in disclosure, they're coming up with all kinds of great, they said the exact same thing you did. Oh, that's amazing. How did you figure that out? I said, I guess you had to been on the ship. And I was.
Another question from Leslie here. Have you had any dealings with Area 51, or do you believe they have information about alien machines or things like the German thing, the La Giga, La Loca?
Okay, good question. It's a real controversial one. Uh, I have not been to Area 51. Two of my abductees did. Um, One of them came back with an implant, not from, in my opinion, Area 51 people, because they weren't in Area 51. They were camping outside the area.
Right.
And so anyway, that individual got 4 implants in their knee area in the tendon, and I have 3 of them. So I don't know anything about Area 51 other than the Japanese paid me $5,000 for an interview in Los Angeles. And in the interview, it's really funny because they came from Japan and they were in a Japanese company, of course. Everybody stood up and bowed and all that. And they asked me questions. There was a whole panel of them sitting there, and they were speaking Japanese back and forth. And then they would look at me after they spoke in Japanese and would say, Mr. Sim, what do you think about Area 51? And I said, I've never been there. And they were all horrified. They realized, oh my God, we spent $5,000 in the sky, and he hadn't even been to Area 51. And I said, I don't know very many people that have actually been to Area 51. I know people have been to the gate, but you're not going in at all. That's never going to happen. I said, so Area 51 is not nearly as important as Area 52. Then they'll start talking Japanese to each other. And then the leader would look at me and say, Mr. Sim, where Area 52? And I laughed and I said, well, I could tell you, but I'd get in a lot of trouble. I said, but that Area 52 is not nearly as important as Area 53.
Oh, God.
Then they're all back and forth. Where Area 53? I said, it's in a place called Pine Gap, Australia. It's in the middle of the country, in the middle of nowhere. And if they catch you with a camera or driving out to the area, within miles of that area, you will be arrested just for being there. So trust me, you don't know what you're talking about. That's what goes on at Area 51. mostly involves advanced aircraft and really some high tech stuff. No question about it. Are there UFOs out there? I don't know. I haven't been there. I can't prove that. I've heard stories. Yes, I get that. Area 52 is White Sands, New Mexico. I lived in Alamogordo, which is next to Holloman Air Force Base, which is next to White Sands. White Sands has a huge sign on the side of the road when you go out of there going toward Las Cruces, New Mexico, and has a huge sign on the other side coming into White Sands over the Oregon Mountains. It says, if you have a camera in your car, put it away. If you get caught taking photographs of anything out here in the desert, anything, you will be arrested and you will stand in front of a federal magistrate and explain why you're not a spy against the United States of America. And they mean it. I know what I'm talking about. So I said, you don't have that at Area 51, but you do at Area 52.
Right.
And you go out to Australia in the middle of nowhere out to that location. I guarantee you better not even have a camera. You better not even be able to spell the word camera when you come out there. So they'll put you away. They will. So the question, I guess, is, what do I believe? Well, believe doesn't mean anything to me. It's what can I prove, or what information do I have about the alien or machines? I have more information about the aliens and machines not related to Roswell or that sort of thing. I have information on a lot of it, but the best information we have about the alien and the evidence we have is from some of the tech people who have built some of the back-engineered stuff, and that wasn't done at Area 51 or Area 52. It was done in actual certain laboratories, some of them around the country, and I've spoken to some of the people that actually did that. In fact, when they started telling me about the medals, special medals that were brought by the intelligence community and what they wanted constructed, and they wanted this thing constructed, and I laughed and I told the guy that told me this, I said, they didn't want any sharp corners on it. He said, how in the world would you know that? I said, I guess you'd had to have been on the craft. So that's my best answer to you.
Oh, thank you for that. Was there anything you hesitated to include in your book?
Was there any what?
Is there anything you hesitated to include in the book?
I love people that ask these kind of questions. What is it you're not telling us? That's what I want to hear. That's why we're private but not secretive. The reason it's important for me to be private is because a lot of my stuff ended up on the internet from 1988 forward without my permission. People just robbed and took our stuff and put it in books and all kinds of stuff and never asked anything, just copied it. And some of them I filed lawsuits on, and others I didn't. I just quit showing a lot of my stuff. I'm not going to put our pictures of our aliens or pictures of hybrids and things out on the internet, because within 3 days, it'll be all over the internet with everybody with their copyright on it. I mean, that's just the way it works. You got so many trolls out there that I just don't have any interest. I just don't care. So I'm happy with doing my research, and I'll answer questions from anybody about anything, in Congress or otherwise. The reason we're never going to get a lot of the great answers in Congress is because you don't know how to ask the right questions, and most of the time you're asking it to the wrong people.
Yeah, I see that as well, many a time. Where do you see the field of UFO alien research heading in the next decades?
Well, let me tell you a short story. In 1990s, I had some MUFON boys here in Houston that were member of MUFON group. I own the Houston UFO Network, still do, and MUFON is the Mutual UFO Network, different organizations. And they would come to our meetings sometimes, and they'd say, "Well, we're not so sure all these alien abductions are really taking place." And I remind them of this now. It's interesting. If you ask anybody in MUFON, do abductions take place, they'll all say categorically, of course. But back in the 1990s, they were having doubts of whether all them stories were really true or not. I said, so you guys have evolved. You literally evolved. You went from didn't believe in any of it to now you believe in a lot of it to now you're believing in a lot more of it. I said, it's really fun to watch how you developed. I said, I already knew it existed because I was a victim of it. I knew what it was about. And I studied it. So I told the I told the MUFON guys that I want you to come to a hypnotherapy class that I'm teaching with my wife. And they said, we don't care about all that. And I said, I get that. You don't have a clue. I want you to come because after you watch what I do in that meeting, you're going to have a clue if you have a brain. So they came and they sat in the back of the room in the dark. And I had everybody walk in. And out of all the people, about 30 people were training under me in hypnotherapy. And then, and of course, most of them were not abductees. Only a couple of them were. But I didn't tell anybody anything. I walked in. I looked at my wife, said, I'll handle everything. And they're all standing there waiting for me to walk in. I walked in. I said, in a moment, I'm going to leave the room. When I come back, I'll be a Nordic. And you will know what to do. I walked out of the room, walked back in, and two of them's head dropped instantly into a deep trance. The MUFON guys sitting in the back of the room were freaking completely out. I said, you think these abductees are not programmed? They know exactly what to do. They're obedient, compliant, and they will do as they're instructed because that is the rule. And now, abductee, that may be a different story. They may fight it. And I've showed a lot of them how to do that, even children, how to thwart abductions if they would like to try that. So that's my short version of how things evolved. And so I knew a lot of this stuff from childhood because I've heard what the aliens talking to each other about. It's like listening in, if you were listening to Putin and his intelligent, his secret staff in the KGB talking to each other, and no one knew, I promise you, you're going to hear a lot of stuff you're going to wish you had never heard. And that's the same thing with the alien. If they knew what I knew and what I'd heard all those years, they would have never said a word. Never.
Probably not.
I don't want to tell them. I don't want them to know. It's what intelligence is about. It's being able to know something that you know that they don't know you know. And you can use it against them if you like.
When we talk about aliens, do you think we are part alien ourselves?
Okay. I've heard that a lot too. I was on Art Bell quite a few times, and he said, you're the best damn investigator there ever was. And I said, you don't get out much, do you? And he just laughed.
I bet he did.
He says, I said, and one guy came on there during the question and answer time, said, I'm part alien. And I said, okay. Art Bell, of course, told him he was nuts. But I said, no, wait a minute. Let's have some fun. I said, if you're alien, I said, I would like for you to take a DNA test for me. I'll choose the company. And it isn't Ancestry.com. I said, I promise you it'll be a real DNA company. And if your DNA has been altered or changed, or you're an alien, it'll show up. Now, here's the deal. You swear you're an alien? He said, absolutely. I said, okay. I said, you pay for the test in advance. If the test comes back positive, you're an alien, I'll pay you back on Art Bell in front of everybody. I've had probably close to 100 people over the years tell me they were alien or part alien. Not one of them has ever taken a DNA test to prove it.
Wow.
Not one. Now, I have had one guy, and totally truthful here, he claimed his DNA had been altered, and I said, okay, show me. And he sent me his testing, and I said, all right, I want to talk to your doctor. And it was a DNA specialist. And I talked to him, and I said, talk to me. He said, he thinks he's an alien. And I said, well, you know something different. He said, he's not an alien. He said, but his DNA has been tampered with. He said, and I don't know who did that. I said, could have been a human. He said, could have been. I said, could have been the intelligence community. He said, it could have been. He said, but he said, Derrel, he said, and I'll stand by my words here. And I've got it in writing. His DNA has been tampered with. His DNA was not alien, and there is a way to tell that. But it had been tampered with, and that was significant to me. But that reeks of the intelligence community, in my opinion.
But if they could tamper with you,
That's possible.
why would they do it? Why would they do that?
They that is the answer I'm going to have to give you is a sick answer. I don't like it. There are people in the intelligence community and KGB, Chinese, or probably the worst of all. KGB would be next, possibly Mossad, and especially the Central Intelligence Agency back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And they did terrible things under the guise of science, and they did it undercover. And the best thing about it is a man called Senator Church in the Senator Church hearings back in the 80s. When it came out, he ordered them to bring all the files forward of these secret projects they've been doing on human beings. And they said they didn't have any, which meant they were burning them as fast as they could get rid of them. Somebody made a mistake, and they had 12 boxes of case files they had forgotten, and Senator Church got them. He made it all public. And things they did on people, giving them LSD and all kinds of things. A number of people committed suicide and different things. It was just some terrible things they did. And of course, the question is, why did they do that? Because they were testing on drugs? No, that's only part of the reason. Listen, the intelligence community has been trying to communicate with the quote unquote UAP entities for a long time. And they've used everything from the occult, psychicism, all kinds of things to try to talk to them. And the guys out there, the so-called alien, are not communicating. They don't want that.
No, probably not.
Well, you find out who they are. What if they're not alien?
Who are they?
Got a real problem. Well, the aliens that we're talking about, these 7 models, are made, hatched, cloned, and manufactured to convince you and me and people on this earth that they're aliens from other planets.
They're not.
Not, but one scientist in NASA wrote a wonderful book, and this is good for your people. It's called Ringmakers of Saturn. And it costs about $350 if you buy it. But if you search the internet carefully, you can find it for free online.
No.
And that book is written by a NASA scientist who did 2 things that were important, in my opinion. Number one, he wrote a book called Ringmakers of Saturn. You want to know where the so-called aliens are hiding? In the rings of Saturn. That's why he called it the Ringmakers of Saturn. They're not eating up the rings, they're producing them. Anyway, read the book, have a lot of fun. The
Yeah.
second thing I like about him is because he started showing pictures in the UFO community of spaceships, not little flying saucers, the ones that house all the flying saucers, hundreds of miles long. NASA photos. I like that because it matches similar to the one we had that was 50 miles thick and 600 miles across.
Good heavens.
And we have a film of it. We don't have a photograph. We have the film.
Film.
Filmed by not us, but by Japanese astronomers looking toward the moon during the mass abduction event of December 8th, 1992, which I was responsible for. So that's my best overall answer about that. The JPL, that's called the Jet Propulsion Lab, they invited me, a UFO guy, they know who I am, to a meeting of, it's called the Cassini Project. Cassini was the first nuclear-powered missile we sent with equipment toward the Jovian system. And I don't know why they invited me there. Me and a doctor friend of mine, I have no idea. Because at the end, they asked, anybody have questions? Of course, these are all scientists, engineers. I mean, I couldn't even been the janitor in that place. They were so smart. So I asked a question. I said, the JPL does robotics. You guys don't do the manned missions. You send all the equipment and stuff before and do all the testing. You did that on the moon, did a great job. Then we sent somebody to the moon. You sent the same stuff to Mars, and I'm really excited about that. I said, but all of a sudden you left the moon all of a sudden, never went back, took a left turn, went to Mars, and now you got all this equipment on Mars. Now all of a sudden you stopped all your stuff on Mars except robotics, and you're sending the first nuclear package to the Jovian system, toward Jupiter, toward Saturn, and so on. Why? What did you see in the Jovian system that interested you to go there with the first nuclear-powered spacecraft? And the room was so silent you could have heard a pin drop.
Very
All of
well.
a sudden you heard, "Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, free drinks and food for everyone in the back." And he just looked at me and scowled. And free gifts in the back as well. Go and get everything. Go, please help yourselves. And that dismissed the meeting. So my point is, the word Cassini is interesting. Guess where the rings are at that the ring maker talks about, where the UFOs are at? Cassini. The Cassini ring in Saturn. They call it the Cassini spacecraft. I wonder why.
Makes you wonder.
Read the book. You may find it interesting.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to get the book. Now, Derrel, thank you. I know we've gone over the hour anyway, but it didn't matter because you're a great guest.
Oh, I just love your audience because they ask the right questions, smart questions, really good questions.
Thank you for that. It's been everybody's enjoyed it. And thank you to everybody who's put the questions in the chat room because they've been very good. And we've had a great time on the show today. And thanks to Derrel for coming on the show. He's always a great guy to have on the show. My guest next Wednesday is Darcy Weir. I don't think I've interviewed him before, so it'll be a first time coming on my show. Yeah, so thank to everybody in the chat room tonight. Thank you to Derrel.
Thank you, Bob.
On the show. I won't leave it too long this next. It's been over a year since you were last on the show.
Okay, thank you, Bob.
Hey, and you take care.
Yes, sir.
And thank you again. Send me regards to your wife.
I will, and she'll love to hear from you. Thank you so much, Bob.
Thank you.